Hello, it's the Security Weekly News, episode 251. It's a special edition, again, on Friday. We're fortunate to have our good friend Fleming Shi on, who is one of my favorite people to talk to. I'm Doug White, and welcome to the week of 23 October 2022. We got Fleming Shi, Fodcha, or however you say it, Cranefly, LinkedIn, CISA, really high speeds, Elon, and more on the Security Weekly News.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week, your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News.
Managing and protecting the world's grueling number of endpoints, enabling Tanium's customers to see, control, and protect every endpoint everywhere. Tanium's mission is to provide certainty in uncertain times with the industry's only converged endpoint management. Trusted by the U.S. military and the majority of the Fortune 100 today, Tanium helps manage and protect nearly 30 million endpoints. Tanium, the power of certainty. Visit securityweekly.com/Tanium to learn more. Right now, everybody is talking about cryptocurrency, and the cyber criminals are hiding in the conversation. Cyber criminals use social engineering loaded with urgency and fear to successfully prey on your company, your employees, and your customers. Spear phishing is just one of the 13 types of email threats. Barracuda has identified 13 types and shows you how you can protect your company, your customers, and your reputation. Find out about the 13 email threat types and Barracuda email protection by going and getting your free ebook at securityweekly.com/Barracuda. That's securityweekly.com/Barracuda. All right, I moved my coffee cup offset of the screen so that I don't want to end up like that Game of Thrones episode where they had the Starbucks cups in there. All right. Fodcha distributed denial of service botnet has a new version out. So all these companies really get that versioning going and patching, and they're so effective. It's pretty interesting. 360 NetLab found that the original Fodcha, which came out back in April of 2022, and they're now up to version 4. So this botnet has 42 command and control domains that they use and operates up to more. Actually, it was more than 60,000 active bot nodes every day, which can generate up to 1 terabit per second of data. So this is denial of service data. That's a lot. You know, I mean, I don't know how you measure data, but that sounds like a lot. NetLab went on and said that the botnet hit a new high peak on the 11th of October and attacked 1,396 targets in one day. The botnet seems to mostly focus on targets in China and the United States, although they attacked people all over the place. And apparently, it's available to rent because down at Fodcha, bad credit, no credit, it's all good. We tote the note. Yeah, I mean, you know, that's probably coming soon. You'll be able to get a loan to rent a botnet. Anyway, another interesting thing about this version of Fodcha is that it has ransom demands embedded in the data of the attack packet. So what they're bombarding you with, if you actually dissect the packet, you can see in the data packet basically a note. It says, please, it says Monero is essentially what it's saying, and it gives you a wallet address, and it also provides information that says the attacks will continue until the ransom is paid. So a very interesting botnet tool, if you're interested in such things. Cranefly is a hacking group using a new technique to control their malware via IIS server logs. And I when I see this, I'm like, this is creative. You know, and if you aren't familiar, IIS is a Microsoft-based web server daemon, and it's used on Exchange server and other places, and it, of course, generates logs. So, you know, so what? Well, Symantec said that they were using the IIS log files to send commands to backdoor malware, which was installed in the affected machines. So, you know, typically malware has some kind of command and control, and it communicates with that and downloads things. And, you know, if one of your devices suddenly starts talking to North Korea and downloading executables, people tend to take notice and try to stop it. So the idea, of course, is that you disguise those command and control communications in ways that aren't very suspicious. And, you know, they had a similar attack like this way back in May that was using Windows event logs. That was a pretty cool story, too. But the dropper in this case is called Trojan.Gepay. I'm not sure if it's Jeppy, I'm not sure. But it installs another Trojan called Danfon, which has never been seen before, apparently. But anyway, JPay gets its instructions by reading commands out of IIS logs on command and control. And what it does is they take the normal log file, embed the instructions, scattered. It's obfuscated, so it's scattered all over the place. And then it looks for specific strings that can be put into a list at the top of the script. And when it finds those strings, it reads the rest of the line. And then basically they parse all that back together into an instruction, which is pretty cool. And so you scatter everything around. It's a lot harder to see. It's a lot harder for people that are monitoring things to actually see something going on, and and so forth. So very cool. The example they used in there had it parse together a command to drop SKC spy or SCK spy, which is an executable that disables local event logging. And it's a very interesting approach. So if you like those kind of scripts, check that one out. LinkedIn is trying to clean up its act to limit fake profiles and malicious use. Thank you, LinkedIn. One of the new methods that they're using will examine whether a profile is authentic based on whether or not it has a verified work email or phone number, which probably won't help that much, but at least it's something. I mean, I get these things pretty regularly. Like the other day, I got one from somebody. It was like a contact, and it said, "Glad I know you in collage." I was like, wait, I think if you went to the school I went to, you'd probably at least be able to spell college. But it said collage, and then it went on to say, "We work together to make new money, okay?" I was like, well, I'm going to send you my bank account information because how could this be wrong? But they are really prevalent. So Lazarus from North Korea often uses this approach with fake job offers. They contact you and say, "Hey, would you like a really awesome job at Amazon where you're paying, $500,000 a year for almost no work," or whatever. Russian SVR uses this approach, and of course, obviously other people use this as well. And of course, it may be just scrapers who wanting to access your resume and whatever information you put on LinkedIn so they can use it for spear phishing attack. But Krebs had a whole big story about this as well last week, about the massive number of fake accounts that exist on LinkedIn, and did research on that. But anyway, they're apparently working to try to force more information to be listed on your LinkedIn account in the About section. I don't think they're going to require it, but if you don't have that, it'll be a lot more obvious that this is one of these, new fake accounts that came up. They also apparently added detection for AI-generated profile photos. So, if you're using "this person does not exist" or those things that I use all the time to make fake pictures, it does do that. And it also added a pop-up warning if a chat message somebody's sending you has asked you to click on an off-site link. So they're trying to help people realize that some of this stuff's maybe not so kosher. Last year, U.S. President Joe Biden launched the Industrial Control System Cybersecurity Initiative, a real mouthful, but nevertheless, ICSCI. This started in July of 2021 after the Colonial Pipeline attack really sort of got the message through to the administration that ICS might be a real issue in the world. This act was an attempt to improve cybersecurity in multiple sectors. It basically tries to, and the key word here is encourage. I don't think there's any mandatory requirements in this act, but it basically encourages companies to adopt better cybersecurity for their ICS setups and stop using that old "nobody can find us and we use proprietary stuff." That security to obscurity stuff that drives me crazy. Take down all your exposed control panels and the button that says launch that's exposed to the internet on some random port. But the story is about how they're now adding the chemical industry to this collection, which I'm not sure why it wasn't in there in the first place, but they probably didn't want to be in there. But they've added it, and they created a new panel via CISA that represents 15 chemical industry groups who will undertake a 100-day exercise to try to create a plan for the chemical industry focused on high-risk chemical facilities, which just sounds really scary to me. High-risk chemical facilities. Coming to a town near you soon. Yeah, that just always sounds really frightening. But they want to encourage information sharing, always a good thing, and coordination with both the federal government and other people in various industries to try to get them to actually take more action and do better with these old ICS systems and new ones that are sitting out there, and share all that information with the federal government. The group doesn't make rules. They just have discussion and proposals. Sounds kind of weak, but I will say that when they started creating stuff like this for the police, there was a lot more focus on these areas in police departments and such. And of course, they eventually started, handing money out to police departments to try to help them develop their digital side. But unlike police departments who can't afford much of anything typically that involves tech, big chemical companies could probably fix this whenever they want if they wanted to do so. In the same light, the Department of Homeland Security announced a set of cybersecurity performance goals designed to help organizations, particularly in critical infrastructure sections, prioritizing cybersecurity investment and address critical risks. The CISA developed this set of guidelines in conjunction with the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is NIST. These are called CPGs, and they are apparently a kind of baseline cyber performance goal. That's CPG, focused on prioritized set of IT and OT security practices, which can help organizations significantly reduce risk and impact of cyber attack. Always a fan of this kind of stuff. The CPGs do cover a large number of sort of MITRE-like attack vectors, and they also cover leadership, training, mitigation, and so forth. So it's nice that at least they're putting some stuff out there for companies to get started on this. And not really a security story, but I could not resist this story. This week, a chip using a single laser and a specialized light thing called a lighting comb was built in a lab. So this is not a commercial product yet. They were able to transmit data over fiber cables at, wait for it, 1.84 petabytes with a P. And wait for it again, per second. So 1.84 petabytes per second. Now, just for reference purposes, this was a single chip and a single laser. The amount of data currently sent over the entire internet in 1 second is around 1 petabyte. That's the entire internet, not just one node. That's like everything, like every tweet, every video, every porn site, everything, 1 petabyte per second. This thing was faster than that in one chip. So the single laser creates a rainbow of colors, and it uses each color as a separate frequency, which is how they jam so much information into that. It would reduce energy demands on the internet and so forth. So maybe holodecks might actually happen someday. You know, I mean, I always had this problem with the holodeck because it seems too data intensive. But, you know, I'm thinking Mr. Spock, Data as Sherlock Holmes, and the Doctor from Voyager in like a Texas cage match might be kind of interesting. But I don't know. I digress. Anyway, today, our special guest is Fleming Shi, the CTO of Barracuda Networks. Fleming has been on any number of times, and we always enjoy having him around because he's fun to talk to and very easy to talk to. I really enjoy it. Welcome aboard, Fleming.
Yeah, thank you for having me again. Happy Friday, everyone.
Yeah, good to see you. I know it's early for you in your time zone, but it's a little early for me even. It's on Eastern time, but that's okay. So we talked about several things we might discuss, and one of the things that sort of led us to this discussion we were going to have was about the election that's coming up. There's massive amounts of disinformation being pumped out on all sides in all directions from different, and no politics here. But that got me started thinking about data and the value of data. And so one of my sort of thoughts coming up, and next week I'm doing a roundtable in Denver at the CISO conference about this, but I was thinking about doxing data and how that kind of double extortion and triple extortion is starting to become a real threat. And so my first question, I think, with you is should companies be collecting this kind of personal information? I mean, what do you think?
I think if it's necessary for the business, and if the business is about working with this information, probably is required. But handling that, it has to be I would say, planned. Especially now, there's a lot of risk and also governance requirements. So it's forcing function to have proper handling of the data. It's not just the technology itself, but also the processes required. But the technology do matter. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you said the key word that popped for me, and I was the reason the election was making me think about this was I was like, say if you're a candidate and you do all these different things, a lot of people get interested in these things about you, and we don't have to mention any specific. Yeah. Sorry, I haven't had enough coffee yet today. Specifical. I don't want to talk about ideology, but I mean, if I have in my company information that I love strawberries, and we'll just use something completely innocuous, but that I like strawberries, and that gets out, that could have a huge impact on me, right? And so the company has a kind of responsibility for this, especially if I'm the anti-strawberry candidate. But in reality, I really love strawberries. But I make a big fuss about pounding the table and saying strawberries, they're the root of all evil. They've caused so much harm in our society, and it gets out. So how do you classify that data? I mean, I know how to do that from a top secret perspective, but how do we start identifying what stuff is dangerous?
That's first of all, I think the biggest thing is understand where your data live. A lot of our tools interacts with SaaS applications. For example, you share data through OneDrive, SharePoint. That's a big SaaS application itself. But from the perspective of understanding that surface, then you apply certain type of classification tools will allow you to identify important information that could be risky for your customers, risky for your your business, because it could be trade secrets, could also be personal information related to employees. Like you mentioned, the strawberry idea is that basically the preferences and things like that probably will be somewhere in a database or somehow shared in a document. So I think the key there is to really first understand where all your SaaS applications are being used, and what type of data live and are in there. I think it's a nice continuation. Last time I was on, we were talking about the SaaS application capabilities to allow security vendors to really examine what's in it, right? Microsoft is sort of on the forefront. They have lots of APIs for security vendors like Barracuda and others to really inspect and understand the type of data you have in your work streams. Doesn't matter if it's at rest or it's being transmitted through file share, or sometimes could be email attached. So I think that's really important. Also, going beyond just patterns, you have to really register the data that matters to you. So it's almost like seeding whatever's being used to examine the data, right? So in relationship to what type of words and information, and maybe the actual content itself, so the systems can actually work and identify those based on the data itself, not just the pattern of the data.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this is actually something that's well suited to just AI type stuff, right? Where you just say a pattern and you say anytime the company name appears in an email, we're going to block it, because it's really tricky, because I'm going to have to start by identifying what are all these components out there. I mean, this is a big weakness, right? I mean, a lot of companies don't even know what they have. I mean, if you go to them, and I've done this many times, and I pull down their network map and I go, wow, the date on this is 1987.
Right.
And then they're going, yeah, we haven't updated that in a while. And it's like, yeah, I don't think it's even remotely accurate, because I see Cisco stuff sitting right there. And this says you have, something else. You have do you actually have any 3-com switches? This is what it's all showing on here. So just that piece is a threat. But then when you get into this very granular kind of problem of what is dangerous, so it's dangerous from what if it leaks? It's also dangerous from how the litigation and liability that results from that, right? I mean, wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. There's a lot of the whole concept of doxing is getting to the degree where it's no longer about business continuity. It's about embarrassment, reputation damage. All these can lead to major, loss in your business, as well as obviously a damaging brand could have a prolonged, basically effects. So I think, we all know in the last, I think, I did some research on this for the last 18 years or so, as an industry, working on the internet. Every industry is working on the internet. Total loss of data, close to 18 billion records, right? So that means we probably lost our, some some of these data breaches they tackled into credit bureaus, major telecom providers, and even rideshare, and all these things basically adds up. Of course, you still have a chance to find ways to prevent basically being doxxed or doxing kind of activities by understanding the value what the bad guys have gotten, right? Whether they really have proof of life in their hands, because they could come back multiple times for ransom asks, ransom payments for that reason, not for business continuity, but for doxing, kind of as their main weapon. Yeah.
And that's that double extortion piece, and even the triple extortion piece, where they go directly to the individuals that are involved. As an example, and this is not a real case because I can't talk about real cases, but it's call it a composite. The names have been changed to protect the innocent. But one time we were doing a forensics case and we were looking through this data, and I realized something, which was that I was looking in particular at a CFO. And I was actually able, through looking at this person's laptop and desktop and email and all this stuff, I really could start establishing stuff that I remember saying to my assistant, I was like, we could extort this guy. Because we could see just in this was a while ago, but we could see in that data what he was doing, that he was drinking a lot. I could see his all of his receipts he was turning in for entertainment expenses, which, seemed to be, I'm going to a bar 3 times a day at, sometimes at 9 a.m. and I subscribe to all this stuff, and on and on and on. And I really realized that we could build a pretty interesting profile of this person's life just out of the data that came out of that system. So how do you start to chop that up? Is there, what do you think about that? It's not just a matter of this is a company secret and this is not. It's really gotten a little more squishy than that.
Yeah. I think mixing use of work computer for personal use, that's obviously a bad practice, because besides the credentials that's already being likely have some overlap, there are also behaviors, right? And I think in the world of actually understanding the risk that's related to the company, probably you want to prevent certain type of application being accessed based on your zero trust kind of I would say posture managed kind of setup. Those solutions will allow you to prevent certain type of behavior on that particular laptop. Well, whatever he or she or whatever the composite you mentioned is doing at home with their own computer is their business, right? But if it's done on a work computer, you have a high risk, because if this person gets extorted by an actual hacker, it could compromise the business. Yeah, especially in such a important
absolutely.
Work.
And that was like in the very first part of the training I went to when I had a top secret clearance with the government. Yeah. One of the first they taught me 2 things at the first training. One of them was, if you're approached by a person of the opposite sex in a bar, it was a long time ago, so I know that's dated, but if you're approached by and I was like, dude, if a person of the opposite sex ever approached me in a bar, I know it's a foreign agent, because that has never ever happened. But the second thing they started talking about was, they wanted me to tell them about behaviors that I had that could be, problems, because that's one of the number one espionage techniques that was used, was to find out people have a drinking problem, find out that they have a problem with whatever they have a problem with, and then they use that to extort you, and it's a huge threat to the company. But even beyond just people, using their own device, think about the amount of information that we collect about people now that maybe don't even work for us, that become liabilities, because if we're collecting cookie information from our customers on our website, we have a big responsibility to protect that information too, right?
Definitely. If you think about that analogy you just made related to the human behavior, the digital behavior of all our products and all the things that we do, if you're not protecting that or protecting it effectively, it could be used against you. It's just as dangerous as the example you used with the foreign agent, right? So because these behaviors are easily measured based on the exposure, the vulnerability levels of your tools or your application that or your websites that you're using for your customers, or your customers are using in your realm. So in that scenario, I would say, of course, there's a lot of data breaches. There's a lot of ways to using graph to actually connect the dots for the bad guys, going between identities to even company entities, how they are interacting with each other. All these things are important to consider as your most important things to protect, right? So
I completely agree. I mean, I think that we're going towards a world where basically you'll be able to assemble profiles of people and their behaviors. It may take 2 data breaches to get all of it, but I think at this point we can assume you're going to get data breached at some point.
Definitely. The one example you covered earlier in the show related to LinkedIn is really interesting, right? Because they're taking out accounts that doesn't look real by using very, I think, rudimentary algorithms there. But if you think about the bad guys, they can create almost like a real account because they have so many phone numbers, they have so many email addresses, they can even construct names. Of course, if they can't even if the actual fake account is not behaving correctly, it's easier to detect. But just using profile settings may not be enough, right? So because the bad guys will probably have more information than you think. They probably have phone numbers. They'll probably have email addresses or account taken over situations where they can respond to those email addresses, right? So these are all potentials for all the SaaS applications out there.
Yeah, and that stuff is so easy to do. I mean, even to do it in a fairly sophisticated way, because I have this sort of fascination with fake data sets, and which I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's fun. And I have this script that I've used a lot usually for class kind of stuff, but it's like it generates fake people, right? So it actually creates all these attributes that would go into Active Directory or something. And I just recently modded it again so that it reaches out to this person does not exist and downloads a photograph of the person, and then and makes that their thumbnail on the Active Directory component. So when they log into OWA or anything like that, you actually see that person. And that script is not hard to write. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward exercise.
Yeah.
And I think it's a super challenge for various tools to try to identify fake accounts and fake information out there. And I think companies have an obligation to try to protect, the customer, and they have to protect your data, the real data as well, and try to eliminate the fake.
That's right. This is why even in email defense, we have to utilize historical patterns of communication to really identify who is real, who is not, who is actually impersonating. And those are the techniques. They're still obviously continue to be more effective, but it's way better than just using rules and things like certain rules are just not going to cover it anymore. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Fleming. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. It's always fun to talk to you, and you're one of my favorite guests. So I'm sure I'll see you again sometime pretty soon, and we'll talk to you then.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to talk to you as well, and look forward to the next time.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. Finally, Elon bought Twitter. Yep, he did. He said he would, then he said he wouldn't, then he said he would, then he said he wouldn't, then the court said you will, and then he said no, I won't, and then the court said yes, you will, but maybe not, and then he said okay, I'll buy it. So he did. And I mean, I always imagine him kind of laughing evilly when he accomplishes these things, but I don't know what his objective is. But he paid $44 billion if you've been under a rock somewhere for Twitter, which is valued in the 10 to 20 billion range. So he paid a lot more than it, so as a Twitter shareholder, I was like, cool. But hey, billionaires got a billion, as they say, I mean, but he tweeted, let the good times roll, and showed up at Twitter headquarters with a sink and said, let that sink in. So, like expensive sight gag, but okay. But a coalition of nonprofit advocacy groups said Musk's plan could make Twitter, quote, a hate-filled cesspool. I was like, it wasn't already a hate-filled cesspool, but apparently they think it will get worse. Well, he did say he was going to fire a bunch of people, and he did start finding people, and he did say he was going to turn Donald Trump loose. So what could possibly go wrong? I mean, it's. I guess we'll find out. Anyway, that's the news. Thanks, Fleming, so much. We'll see you next week on the Security Weekly News.